we're talking about branding to make people feel comfortable that senior living isn't what they think it is. Like we're trying to change perceptions. And the best way to change perceptions is by being out there and actually saying what it is, right? This is not a nursing home from 50 years ago. This is a vibrant place where people enjoy life.
What if the key to better move-ins wasn't another ad campaign, but finally asking why before we act? Today's guest is on a mission to bring strategy, soul, and smarter systems to the way we grow communities.
Welcome to From Leads to Leases, a CCR growth podcast that helps senior living providers transform their complex challenges into opportunities. Listen in for stories from industry leaders, innovative strategies, and insights. And with our expertise, learn how to increase occupancy faster, guaranteed.
Welcome back to another episode of From Leads to Leases, the podcast that dives deep into the senior living and senior care industries, bringing you insights, strategies, and stories from the experts at the forefront of innovation, leadership, and care. I'm your host, Jerry Vinci, CEO of CCR Growth. For those of you who don't know about us, CCR Growth is a full-service marketing and growth agency exclusive to the senior living industry. And through this podcast, I'm here to guide you through the evolving landscape of senior care, exploring the innovations, the strategies, and leadership insights that are shaping the future of the industry. So whether you're a provider, a caregiver, or an industry leader, this show is here to help you make informed decisions and create meaningful impact. Today's guest is Lola Rain, a senior living strategist, speaker, and creative force who has spent over 15 years inside the industry, driving change from both the provider and vendor sides. From high-tech innovation to old-school event marketing, Lola is known for helping organizations elevate their brand, humanize their messaging, and build strategies that actually move the needle. So welcome, Lola. I'm so glad to have you here.
Hi, Jerry. It's good to see you.
You too. I want to jump right into it. We got a lot of questions to cover, and obviously marketing is one of my favorite topics. And I love your approach. You've got this new school, old school approach that's always running. And I want to talk about both. So you've said in the past that strategies, your area of expertise. What does that actually look like in practice in senior living?
So starting with the big picture. What is the number one goal that you're trying to achieve? And what are some of the barriers to achieving it? So looking beyond just marketing and sales, but what else is going on within the building or the organization, or even bigger within trends of the industry or economic challenges?
Why do you think so many leaders default to execution before planning? I see that a lot too.
Yeah, so a lot of times somebody will come to a leader and say, hey, this competitor over here is doing this one thing. Can we do that? Well, what I really look at is, what is the intention of it? What do you want the outcome to be? Let's not just duplicate what somebody else is doing. Let's do it better. Let's determine, is it something that's going to help differentiate us? If it's not going to, if it's just going to make us look like the guy next door, then why do it at all?
I see there's a lot of and I don't know if it's in other spaces as much as senior living, but there's a lot of that FOMO action happening with marketing and advertising. I see this guy's running ads over here. I need to be running ads over here. And nobody's really asking that question why, which I always find interesting. It's a budget burn for no reason if you don't understand the why behind it. So I totally agree with your perspective there.
Yeah, most of the time, if you're going to hire an agency, the first thing the agency is going to do is a competitive analysis and see what the different buildings around your region are doing and what's working and what's not. So I highly recommend working with the professionals like you, Jerry, because you'll be able to dive in there and create that plan that really differentiates.
So what would you say if a provider came to you, an operator came to you and said, I want to create a video because the guy down the street has a video, just because that's what the competitor's doing, but he doesn't really understand the why? What would you say to someone in that situation?
Yeah, this has happened to me quite a bit. And in fact, other departments have brought me videos and said, can you go ahead and put this up on our YouTube channel? And they felt the need to go out, hire a videographer, go out to the communities, create this end product without getting the marketing department involved with it. And so there was no why. And I said, well, what would you like to do with this video? And the answer was put it on the YouTube page so that people could see it. Well, who's going to see it? And if I remember correctly from that example, they spent $3,000 on videos, and I looked at it a year later and only 30 views had happened. So
Yeah.
you got to have your why before you even start. And if you're going to hire a video team to come in and do videos, let them know what that intention is so that they can create it with the end in mind.
Shifting to branding a little bit, I feel like branding doesn't get the attention that it deserves. I know that you focus a lot on that. I focus a lot on that. I think it's the core of what really sets communities apart, especially in today's competitive market. You had shared a plan to build a brand that's felt throughout the building with me prior. What are the key parts of that approach?
So going in and talking with your residents and your staff, they know your brand and what differentiates you better than anybody. And really celebrating that brand across every department in the community and in the organization. Because if you don't go to the frontline staff and get them involved and get them excited and really illuminate what's happening day to day in your communities, you are making a brand that has no realistic application. Like, you can
Yeah.
put a logo out there, you can put your website with all your colors, and if it doesn't really exude what's happening within the community, then it means nothing.
And what role, you wouldn't often think branding and life enrichment play hand in hand, but I feel like that's part of the culture that you're building through the branding. What role does life enrichment play in standing out from the crowd?
So life enrichment is really the heart of the entire building, right? The whole community gathers together to do activities, and those activities should be designed around the likes and the interests of the people who are living there. And so that's where the vitality lives. That's where each individual gets to express themselves and socialize and really gets to do what they want to do, right? I think that life enrichment is the most important part of the community. And if it's not being highlighted through the marketing efforts, we're falling short on what we need to be doing to draw more new residents in.
Another big piece of the brand too is resident and staff testimonials. How do you gather those in a way that feels authentic and usable for the community?
Well, I like to go hang out with the residents and ask them questions. So I will go to different events that are happening in the community and talk with residents. I'll also ask for volunteers to sit down with me and tell me their stories. So storytelling is one of the best ways to really dive into your marketing and get good testimonials for your website, whether you do that through interviews or videos. There's just so much you can do. We'll highlight certain residents with interesting histories, right? So say there's a music event coming up. And so that's happening right now at the Tamalpais Marin. We have a music event coming up in a couple of months. So I'm going to go in and speak with the different residents who are really involved in music, whether that means they play the piano or they love certain types of music. But I want to uncover those interests. And then I want to also, during that period of time that I'm talking to them, get to the core of what do they love about living in the community. What do they want other people to know about living in the community? And that way we can do the storytelling and put it out on our website and our social media channels. And it basically tells the truth about the building, right? Because we're hearing it from inside the building.
When it comes to branding too, do you find it difficult to measure the ROI on that, or the results that come from improving the overall brand, the culture, the messaging that comes through that? Or is that something that you found can be quantifiable?
So it's really interesting. If you start with a good strategy and you have your goal. So I often will start with, how many move-ins do I need this year? And then I'll back out from there. And 50%, maybe 25% of what I do is going to be branded efforts, right? The other elements of the campaigns will be focused on driving people straight to the building. So whether that's coming in for an event or coming in for a tour, we want to get people into the building. But we need to remember that there's a whole effort put into branding prior to people making contact with us, right? They need to recognize who we are. And sometimes that doesn't happen until they're actually doing their first search. Right. And so even what you have popping up on your Google search needs to not just be about the amenities of the community. It needs to be about who you are. So if you're a nonprofit who's been around 60 years, you know, you got to say that. If you are a place that attracts certain types of people, then say that as well, right? Those are your differentiators. And so that's what goes into a good branding campaign. Now, going back to your question about how do you measure its success? Well, that's not the easiest thing to do because as we know, we're not out on a regular basis doing a TOMA. So, top of mind awareness, research. And I've done those in the past working for different companies, but it's not something that's normally done where you ask people, what companies do you recognize the names of? So since we're not doing that type of research like some other industries might do, what we're looking at is, are we driving results? Right? So we're looking at the database. We're saying how many new leads came in, how many have converted to tours in the building, how many are now in that final stage of filling out an application and moving in. And then that way I take the entire marketing budget and I divide it by the number of move-ins. And so that shows my success. And then I benchmark that and I watch it over time. So then that way when the CFO comes to me, I know my numbers, right? And generally, working with CFOs, what they care about is that they're reaching their occupancy because they know their numbers too, right? And so I just need to prove that my budget is being spent in achieving what that financial goal is.
I think in this industry too, it's more about brand differentiation than it is brand awareness. So I think what you're saying makes total sense. And I only say that because nobody's really looking for senior living until they're looking for senior living. And then they may only be a few months into their search or a few weeks into their search. So they haven't had enough time to really absorb all of the different options and brands that are out there. And there's only a few really that are kind of, household names these days anyways. So I think the brand recognition piece is so important because while we see that as an obvious thing, if you've been around since the 1960s, you make sure to put that on your website, put that front and center that you have history and longevity and you've maintained 100% occupancy for the last 20 years. Like that says so much, but there's so many communities that don't think about the importance of communicating that first and foremost.
Right, right. And taking that one step further, even we're talking about branding to make people feel comfortable that senior living isn't what they think it is. Like we're trying to change perceptions. And the best way to change perceptions is by being out there and actually saying what it is, right? This is not a nursing home from 50 years ago. This is a vibrant place where people enjoy life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the big things that you focus on too, and this is where we met, was events. So I know that events can really help drive Census and you're passionate about event marketing. What makes an event successful in today's environment?
So first off, you got to start early in your planning for it. Like I think we were talking before about how some buildings decide, oh, I'm going to have an event in 3 weeks. Let's go and put it on our website.
Oh, no.
And then nothing happens, right? Like, how's people supposed to find it on your website if you're not out there promoting it? So really start 8 weeks in advance. And I even prefer to know the entire event schedule at the beginning of the year. Now, I can't get every building to do that, but when I just take the initiative, I say, here's your calendar. Right? Like not waiting for the sales team to get back to me and just say, here's your calendar. If you would like certain types of events, let me know. If not, I'll go ahead and schedule speakers for you. And as soon as I know those topics and those speakers, I can start creating the landing page, the ad campaign, the direct mail, the print ads. We do some Google ads and some social media ads around events, but we still know that the number one driver for our events is in our own database, right? Because we've been collecting these email addresses for years and people maybe have not been ready a year or two ago, but they're ready now. The second driver for events is direct mail. And direct mail where we think, oh, it doesn't work anymore. It does work with our demographic because they see it and they say, oh, I want to go there and check that out. I've been thinking about this. So you have to show up in their mailbox at the right time. Like with any advertising, it's about hitting them with relevancy, right? At the right time with the right message, which means over and over and over and over and over again until it's the right time.
And aside from timing, right? Aside from giving yourself enough time to properly prepare, are there any specific ways that you found that really drives the needle home, drives registrations far greater than others? Or is it just a combined efforts of like all those different strategies working together?
I absolutely think you need combined efforts. I also
Yeah.
think it's the topic. So, like when I have Matt Paxton speak at the different communities, it draws in crowds of 100 to 200 people. And obviously, it's the size of the auditorium when you have to cut off the registrations. But the more you do, the more you can bring people in. And so just keeping up those efforts. So what often I'll do is a direct mail. And if I'm not hitting that registration number, then I start increasing the amount of email blasts. And I use different local publications that have email lists. Like I gave the example of Tamalpais Marin, the local newspaper there, their email blasts hit 60,000 people in our target demographic. So it's a great way to get the message out. So you have to know what those local media outlets are and what their reach is. The way you can work with them, you can say, oh yeah, let's do this print ad and let's do this email blast and let's do these banner ads on your website. And so that combination drives that number. And, again, turn up that volume if you're not hitting your number, which means more money that you have to put into your campaign. And you need to know, like, what is that budget? When do you have to cut this off? But I'll tell you, when you have a really good speaker and you fill that building, fill that room, that auditorium, it's relatively easy to get people to deposit immediately after. And you want somewhere between 2 and 5 deposits, but the only way it's going to happen is if your sales team follows up with the people and gets to know them and does their sales magic.
Since you've managed events in several different geographic areas too, I mean, do you see the same similar formula working in all of them, or does each one require its own unique strategy and formula?
So I think the formula is pretty universal. The main thing is to know your audience. Right? So if you have a local publication and nobody reads it, then don't pay to advertise in it.
Yeah, right.
Another good way is when people come into your events or come in to tour your community, ask them how they heard about you, right? That's going to tell you where to keep advertising. Make sure you put that information in your database because your marketing team is going to go back in and look for those sources. So when I go into Welcome Home in this example and I look for sources, or I can even go into HubSpot because I use HubSpot as well, and I can look to see what websites triggered the form fills, right? I take all of that information and I say, oh, well, we didn't get much success over here. We got more success here. I can adjust my budget going forward. But I also want to warn people that just because you didn't get immediate success from one channel doesn't mean it didn't do good for your branding.
Yeah. Yeah. Future decisions based on previous data isn't always 100% accurate. So
Yeah.
I agree with that. And then at the end of the event, when it's over, how do you recommend following up to make it count?
Well, this is an entire strategy on its own. So during the event, usually you have a couple of salespeople walking around talking to people, and it's very important to take notes and to put those notes immediately into your CRM. I mean, that's number one. And activity follow-ups. So you want to make sure every single person, let's say 50 people came to this event. Every person in your CRM needs to be in there with a activity follow-up. So that means call them in 3 to 5 days. How did you like the event? What kind of questions do you have? When can I schedule a time for you to come back so I can give you a personalized tour of our community? So those are definitely your follow-ups within that short period of time. Then if they say, oh, I'm not ready yet, put that activity reminder in your CRM. Follow up with them in 3 weeks, 6 weeks, just keep going, but don't let it fall off. The only time you should close a lead is when they absolutely don't want to move into your building. They moved in somewhere else. And even then, when you close them, you lost them to a competitor, but doesn't mean they can't resurface at some point. Yeah. So be very diligent about following up.
That's great advice. There's so much value in that list. And oftentimes I think sales teams give up too soon. They'll try to reach out to somebody just a few times and then they go into this other list, right, that they never tap into again. And you can do so many things with follow-ups and to keep those semi-warm leads warm or engaged, or at least knowing what's going on with your brand, just in case, like you said, things change on their end, because it does happen quite a bit where somebody might move in somewhere else and then change their mind.
Yeah.
So that's
And
great.
also your marketing automation to keep nurturing those leads, that works over time. Text messaging, utilize text messaging. It's a great way to stay in touch.
I want to talk a little bit about the path that doesn't exist yet. So you mentioned how powerful it was to be hugged by Lynn Katzman and Bob Kramer at the last event. Why did that moment mean so much to you?
So, because I've been in the industry for 15 years and I've gotten to know a lot of people over those years, there's people I look up to. And they're the usual suspects. They're the ones that get invited to do keynotes all the time at different industry events. And now to be recognized by them and for them to know my name, that's so exciting to me. And then also the hugs, like that, to me, that means like that I'm valued. Not am I only recognized, but like, wow, I feel like I have a relationship with them. And in a way, it's like that I've gotten to that place in my career, right? Like celebrating that I'm known and valued. I just love it. I love the people who work in our industry. I always say once you go into senior living, there's no other industry for you, right? You stay here and because it's rewarding. And there's so many wonderful people who we can look up to and learn from. And Bob and Lynn are two of those people for me.
That's such a great feeling to get recognition like that in the industry, especially after putting in your time, so to speak. I know the first event that I met you at, I had at least 5 people come up to me and ask me if I've met Lola yet. So it's pretty cool. I mean, you're definitely like a household name when it comes to the event circuit, which I love for you. And I think, you're starting to, or you already have carved out your own path in this industry. I mean, what has that journey been like and what barriers have you faced along the way?
It's interesting because you would hope that you would get to a point and you would be able to continue to grow, but it takes a lot of effort. And I'm sure that's the same in any industry. I used to work in residential real estate and new construction. It was a little bit different, but in our industry in particular, right, you've got people who work in the building and then you've got people who work in corporate offices or support centers. And you want to be able to grow your career and move up into a leadership position. And it's not that easy. The barriers are frustrating because in order to move up, you have to generally change companies. And then to find the right company that's a good fit for you, you've got to be at these industry events, which takes a lot of time, costs a lot of money. You got to make a lot of phone calls and try to get to the right person, right? So you generally want to talk to CEOs or people in those leadership seats and then tell them your story. And even if you may be good at sales and marketing, you may not be great at selling yourself. I think that that's probably pretty true for most people, right?
True. Yeah.
Is you have to market yourself and people have to know who you are. And so, my next step in my career is definitely in the C-suite, but how do I get there, right? I've been in VP positions at multiple companies. It's about where do I go next that I feel like I'm thriving and that I'm making the biggest impact. And so, I think that everybody who wants that growth needs some kind of plan to get there because it's not going to just happen by wishing for it. Somebody's not just going to recognize you and say, "Hey, you get to go to the
Let's
next
go.
place."
That's so true.
You just got to have perseverance and keep trying.
I've spoken with quite a few leaders and even specifically women in leadership roles, CEOs or CFOs. And a lot of them, they're like, oh, I started out in food service or I started out somewhere else in the building, right? And then they eventually just like moved up and moved up and moved up. And that seems to be the pathway, right, to getting to that C-suite. But do you think there's less of that now than there was? Or do you think are people just hiring from the outside in?
Yeah, I don't think there's as much movement within an organization as we think. We see the people who are at industry events and on stage and they're talking about their paths. I remember the story from Costco, right? The CEO started as pushing carts. Well, that's a
Yeah.
wonderful, like, American. I worked up from the bottom, right? I achieved greatness. I don't think that's the reality for most people. I think that yes, you have to be agile and move companies if you want to get to the next level. But each person's unique, right? They might be happy being in that certain role for 30, 40 years. I've met those people and they're absolutely fine just where they're at. So I think it's um, as a department head, recognizing the people who want to achieve more and do more and impact more. Those are the people that need the support. And when I was at the Senior Living Executive Conference, there was a great panel with the women in leadership that Argentum has put together. Some of the things that they said was, not only do we need to mentor each other and network together, but we need to be advocates for each other, right? We need to support each other by talking about each other and saying, this person over here is doing such great work. That's a sponsorship. That's what the word that they used is, sponsoring each other.
I like that.
So it takes being collaborative, which is a little different, because think about when you really want that next job and you're in competition with other people, different mindsets.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about marketing ROI and the hard truths. I think a lot of operators don't necessarily know or don't realize the costs associated sometimes with the efforts that are being put in. I know you mentioned cost per move-in at a life plan community can easily hit $25,000. How do you justify those acquisition costs?
So it's interesting, in our industry, people don't generally talk about acquisition costs because of the
You're
reason
right.
why, like, oh, let's do this, let's do that. They're trying so many different things. They're not creating a formula and repeating that formula. And so generally we don't talk about acquisition costs, which I think is a missed opportunity. We should know how much money we're putting into each person that's moving into the building. The way that I calculate the acquisition cost is different than maybe in a different industry where they're looking for attribution costs, right? So an attribution is, this move-in came from this channel. How much money did I pay on this channel to get this move-in? So that's different than taking the entire budget and saying, what efforts did it take to get the number of move-ins that we needed this year. So if you take your 30 move-ins that you got last year and your $300,000 budget and divided that, that's your cost per move-in. But for life plan communities, it's a lot higher, right? Like all the efforts that go into it, and even from the point that somebody fills out the application and the different stages they go through with the financial and health portions of that application, the reviews that require people from other departments, right? The chief medical officer, the head of the clinical services. So many different people help that process along. And it's a long process, especially like going back to assisted living, where it should be a shorter process because it's need driven. The cost should be low because you are getting people to move in quicker. But you need to know your costs, and if it's acceptable, or if you want to try to lower those costs, what can you do to really be more efficient with your budgets?
Yeah, I totally agree. Acquisition cost was one of the first numbers that I realized that most of our clients didn't have a line of sight on at all.
Yeah.
So that was one of the goals, was to get clarity on that so we could help them make better, smarter decisions. And I know some life plan communities, I mean, their sales cycle is anywhere from 3 to 5 years in some cases. So they're spending huge amounts of money just to get people through the door. But like you said, there's so many steps in the process. It makes sense that they would have to put 4 or 5 times the budget behind getting one move in than assisted living or memory care or even independent living,
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you say to leaders who want just one more brochure or a $25,000 video without a plan to use it?
Don't do it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, they're even creating a brochure. There's so much resources that go into that. So you've got to hire the designer, the writer, who's the project manager internally, who's the decision maker, who else does it need to go out to before it's approved, then it goes to printing. And so if somebody says, oh, this brochure only costs $2 per unit to print, that's not how much it costs. You got to take all of those other people's times and put it into that equation. So you need to know that those brochures are going to be used. I produce some really, really nice sales collateral that's about $450 a unit to be printed. So, and it took months to create these pieces. So the back end could be $10,000 easily of prep time design and writing and editing and everything that goes into it. So when a salesperson wants to go use these as at a tabling event, I say, no, use your trifold brochure. That brochure, this beautiful piece, is what you give somebody at the end of your tour. This is when you sit down with them and show them, this is everything you get when you move into this community. Your life is so much better. Look at these smiling faces. Look at this list of different activities in the community, right? This is your portfolio. If you're at a tabling event and you don't know who's going to be walking up to your table, don't give them this $4.50 piece. Give them this 50-cent trifold brochure. Knowing, like, if we don't tell the salespeople this, they're not just going to automatically know it. I think there's a huge lack of communication between all departments of here's the best practices and how we want to have things done from a budget, resource perspective.
How do you think sales and marketing could work better together? I think there's always a divide, but on some level, I'm starting to see it viewed more as like this is the acquisitions team, right? Like we're all working together to achieve the same goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Call them revenue department. Like,
Yeah.
maybe renaming them away from sales and marketing. That might be a great test to do.
Yeah.
So the best way is that marketing needs to spend time with sales in the communities, and that within the communities, the titles need to be accurate. So if you have a marketing person sitting in a sales seat, we really need to make sure that they are named appropriately so that they know what their responsibility is. So often we might have a marketing person in a sales seat and they're out doing a little bit more outreach. They're making flyers, going out to industry events, doing outreach, but maybe they're not the best at converting a lead, right? So evaluating your team and ensuring that the right talent is in the right role. Without that, you're never going to hit your occupancy numbers.
One of the things we talked about too was, and we talked about it a little earlier, was you've kind of working backwards, figuring out how many move-ins do they need first, and then kind of reverse engineering from there. What do you think is often missed in that process?
What's missed is all of the times during the year. So let's say we are creating a strategy for the upcoming year. And we have our formula and we know the number of move-ins. The thing that can throw this completely off is one, move-outs, attrition, deaths, and we can't ignore that in our industry. There have been times where we've said, okay, we're going to have 10 move-ups or move-outs within the next 12 months, and we end up with 20. And so instead of needing 30 move-ins, we need 50. Like, it can be a surprise, and it impacts everybody in the building, the morale. Because when you lose your residents, it's sad. It impacts everybody. And it's not just a projection, it's real people's lives. So that can derail the whole strategy, and you got to bounce back from it. And being a human during that process, right? Like, not calling the executive director saying, oh, well, we need to get back on the boat. Like, we were like, I'm
insensitive.
sorry that you're experiencing these losses. It's human life. The other thing that impacts it is when people come to you and say, hey, can we do this other thing? Can I have $25,000 for this video that we want to do? Then you got to say, okay, how is this video going to help us achieve these move-ins? So knowing that you're spending the money in the right places. The other, we get calls constantly from vendors saying, hey, do you want to try this new AI? Or let's do these direct mail pieces over here. Like, it's endless, the amount of phone calls, and we can't engage with every single one of them because our budget is a certain number. And we can look at it and go, oh, wow, I can see how that will help me achieve my goal this year, but it has to have an impact on that goal. You can't just do it because somebody's asking you to pay for another product or service.
One of the things too we had talked about, you talk about a lot, is the F word. So I wanted to ask you about that.
I was so excited to speak at Mary Furlong's Longevity Venture Summit recently and talk about language. Words matter. And perception, thoughts, they matter too. But specifically, the words that we use make a huge impact on everything we do in our industry. And the word facility is the F word that I'm referring to. And facility, one of the definitions of facility is a place where you store something, a place where you store something. We do not store people. We do not store older adults in senior living or long-term care, right? That's not what we do. So don't ever call it a facility. I don't even care if facility is in the name of it. Do not use the F word. So we know that a skilled nursing facility, SNFs, the F word's in there, but we don't have to call it a skilled nursing facility. We can call it skilled care, a skilled nursing center, or just skilled nursing. And somebody said something to me like, well, we don't ever call the opposite unskilled. So why are we even calling it skilled? So there's two things within a skilled nursing. There's long-term care and rehab. So we could call it rehabilitation service and long-term care, right? That F word does not have to be in your language. The most important thing that you have to tell, no matter what level of care that you're offering in your buildings, is you have to tell your frontline staff what are the appropriate words to use and what words to not use, because they'll continue using the word facility from a clinical viewpoint. That's all they know because that's what they learned. Until you tell them otherwise, they're going to continue to say it. And if we really want our residents and their family members to know that we are caring for them as humans, we need to stop using the word facility. It does not help our efforts at all.
Yeah, it's got to come from the top down. It's a cultural change within the community where everybody's speaking the same language for sure. I mean, even memory care, I hear that a lot. People say memory care facility, and it always just makes my skin crawl, and skilled nursing too. I mean, it's still a community. They're all communities. People are coming together to live in a space collectively for the care that they need, but it doesn't mean they're being warehoused. It doesn't mean that it's an only clinical setting and nothing else. It's not a hospital per se. So, yeah, I think that's important.
And from the perspective of the family members. So I remember when I used to work in a lot of skilled nursing communities, I would watch people walk in, and then I was also in charge of the online reviews. So I would see them walk in and their expressions on their face, and then I would read their reviews later on. When you go into skilled nursing, there's so many aspects of it that somebody who's brand new will not understand. People sitting out in the corridors in their wheelchairs, right? Like, it's a different environment. And it can be really upsetting for somebody whose parent or loved one has just gone through a stroke or a heart attack or whatever their health event was that got them there. The whole family is emotional. And so knowing that this is the first time they've ever seen this and what the reaction is and how can we make it more settling for them, right? Like, how can we make them feel good about being there and not just being another nursing home that is, a place you don't want to go? My father, I will never go to a nursing home is what he tells me. And I said, well, there's more than nursing homes out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my parents too. And I saw my grandmother, and that's how things have changed generationally. I mean, all my grandparents ended up in some type of senior living community. My grandmother had dementia, and she did end up in a nursing home, and it was a terrible ordeal, a terrible situation. But my family didn't know any better at the time, and they were kind of pressed to find something quickly. So I just think that the whole narrative is still there with the boomers now. They're still thinking about everything as a nursing home and not seeing that there's all these differences until they go tour one. And then they're like, wow, this is amazing. I love cruise ships. It's like a land-based cruise ship
Yeah, it
for the
can
most
be.
part.
Can be.
It
Not
can
all
be,
of
yeah.
them are, but that's why you have
Yeah.
to go out and
Do
visit
your homework.
multiple communities and see where the best fit is for each individual.
Yeah. Just talking about the future too. I mean, I know we're all just kind of getting started with AI and getting it into our daily workflow. How do you think AI could or is reshaping marketing in our field?
Well, I've always liked to say I'm an early adopter of different things, but AI was one of those that I was like, I don't like this. This is from a society standpoint, it's really scary. It's really scary. Now that I've started using it, I'm using ChatGPT almost every day. It's fantastic for when I'm out at conferences and I want to take notes and I want to transcribe into bullet points. And there's just so much I can do with it. I used it in the most recent presentation I gave. It helped me make my slide deck, and then I went through and edited it. So what I've learned from the different speakers recently is that AI is good to generate ideas, but you still have to go in and you have to edit it down and fact check it because it may not be factual. a couple of different vendors that I've met with, I am excited about their offerings. So things like the chatbots on our website that I no longer have to write scripts for. I still have to edit them, but I don't have to write the scripts for them. That saves me hours of time and headache, because writing scripts isn't just about me writing scripts. It's about sending it out to each salesperson asking, is this accurate? Is this what you're hearing from people who actually call and ask the questions? Because I can't assume that I know those details that only the salespeople would know. But yeah, there's other things, like I met a company called Buddy AI out of Silicon Valley, and they have a product that is behind the scenes that's almost like a Zapier that can connect your tech stack together so that data flows from one program to the other, which is just phenomenal. Even Copilot, there's things we can train Copilot on Microsoft to do, like analyze budgets and see where problem areas may be. So that's exciting. And I also want to share that AI, artificial intelligence, what we're doing now has gotten here in iterative process, right? Because if you think back 10, 15 years ago when big data was on the front cover of Harvard Business Review, and then these buzzwords that have happened over the years, AI is just the next generation of everything. Machine learning, AI, the next generation. It's not like it just all of a sudden popped up. It got here, it grew, to be what it is today.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's always going to be some level of human intervention on some level, I hope, when it comes to the marketing side of things. Otherwise, it just becomes completely impersonal. But when it comes to the workflow of the things that we can accomplish and the amount of time that it takes, that's where I think we see the real benefits and gains right now, from graphic design, content creation, planning, outlining, strategy. I mean, all of those things I think are benefited by some level of AI, depending on what platform you're using. But we're using it in pretty much all areas of our business now, from managing emails to creating marketing proposals for clients. And it's been very, very efficient, and it's getting better all the time. So
yeah. Well,
yeah.
and you can put into ChatGPT, give me the 10 bullet points I need to know about this organization. And so, I can use that information when I'm then going to their website and look at their brand and really get to know who they are and be prepped for any conversation that I'm having with them. Right? Like, it just makes a huge difference. It lessens the amount of discovery that I need to do when I'm talking with somebody. It also allows me to make more of a human connection because I'm not so focused on the details of their organization.
Yeah. I think because we're such a relationship-based industry too, I think the human element is always going to be a part of that.
Right.
Simon Sinek was recently on a podcast, and he was talking about the proliferation of AI, and he was basically saying that everybody right now is so focused on the destination with AI. They just want output. They want to put a question in and get an answer, and they don't want to focus on the journey that happens in between. And that's where we as humans learn, and
Yeah.
I think that's the part that we can't get rid of, that, because at the end of the day, even if AI is helping us, right? Like if it's providing you a brief before you meet somebody, you get to know the top 10 things about them. You still have to digest that and understand how to apply that and use that in the conversation.
Right.
And you still have to have the social skills to have that conversation in the first place. So there's ways it helps, but then there's also things that are still ultimately under our control.
Right. Well, and here's where I'm worried though, because, like, for example, I would love to use it to create pillar content. So pillar content is something I've not done because the amount of time that it takes. And pillar content is literally having a page of information and then creating other topics around that then Google uses to help rank our sites higher. Right. So also, prospects read it, so it needs to make sense. You can't just have different topics that are tied together that really don't belong together. Right. So it's very, very time consuming. I haven't done it. I've always wanted to do it, but there's other things that we can do instead. And now with AI, we can do pillar content very easily. However, Google is adjusting continuously the way they rank websites. Right. So we can now go and create these things that we haven't necessarily had the time to do, but will Google continue to use that content the way that they've previously used it? And they're also saying that Google can recognize if it's AI generated content. And then there's what Google is doing itself with the AI generated content at the top of of different web searches, and how do we get into the AI generated content? So then that's the next stage. So sometimes it feels like we're chasing our tails because we're not really in control. Google's in control.
No, we only, they're light years ahead of us without us even knowing it. When the next thing comes out, we're already behind. Somebody recently asked, are you guys keeping up with the latest marketing trends? It's as best we can, but 5 minutes from now, there's going to be something that changes, and then we're going to have to go learn that too. So I think in the role of marketing, our role is just to stay as educated and up to speed as we can, because our clients rely on us to be able to put their best foot forward and to connect with their audience in whatever way their audience is consuming content, right? So whether they're searching on chat versus Google, we have to be able to be visible on both platforms now versus just Google.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Lola, thank you so much for such a great conversation. This was awesome.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you,
you
Jerry.
coming on.
It's great to talk with you.
Where can our audience go to learn more about your work, follow you, or connect with you online?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Lola Rain out there. So connect with me, send me a message, and I'd be happy to chat.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up today's episode, I want to extend a huge thank you to you, Lola Rain, for joining us and sharing your insights on what it really takes to market with intention in senior living, from strategy frameworks and event planning to elevating brand storytelling and pushing for leadership representation. Lola, your voice is one this industry needs more of. So if you want to connect with Lola, we've included her LinkedIn info in the show notes. As always, we hope you found this episode insightful and inspiring, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to explore the evolving world of senior care, covering everything from innovative care models and leadership strategies to family support, technology, and the future of aging. And remember that From Leads to Leases isn't just an audio experience, we're also a video podcast. So if you want to see the video versions of our episodes, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube or Spotify channels. I'm Jerry Vinci, CEO of CCR Growth. Thank you for joining us on From Leads to Leases. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode with anyone who might find it useful. I'm truly grateful for your time and attention. And until next time, lead with strategy and with heart. Chat with you again soon. Thanks, Lola.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to From Leads to Leases. Are you ready to fill your rooms faster and increase occupancy? Visit ccrgrowth.com to learn about our Senior Growth Innovation Suite, a proven system to generate highly qualified, tour-ready leads, accelerate sales, and reduce acquisition costs. Let's connect and turn your challenges into opportunities. See you next time.